G'day guys, how's it going? So, I was having fun this morning. Anyways, terminological differences, don't know if that's really a word, but differences in terminology and how they apply, and the misinterpretations, and I don't know, someone got on their high horse a bit, I think. I was talking about aftercare and how, yes, it is a courtesy thing for people to check in a couple of days afterwards, see how people are going, but that's not a part of aftercare because by then a lot of people are going into drop at that stage and just checking to see how people are, how they're coping, and all that sort of stuff. However, the fact that I use the term saying, I perform a welfare check on them, and one person was like, oh well, to me the welfare check is like deigning to give someone something like a charity thing. And I'm like, well, no, actually, the fact that you interpreted it that way and completely out of context, particularly in this regard, is the fact that the definition, I've put it in there, the definition of well-being or welfare is, the health and well-being and fortunes of a group or person. It is not, as more recently has become, a social initiative in order to provide for those less fortunate. And check, spelling, as in checking in on somebody and checking in on their welfare, it's kind of a logical term for me to go, okay, doing a welfare check, and I've done that to people, so a couple of days afterwards, doing a welfare check, how's it going? I go, oh, cool, good. I put that down to terminological differences, or the difference in application of terms in context, because I would naturally assume that this person is from North America, because that's one of the only places in which they use the term and spelling welfare check to mean that. In fact, that they still do have checks over in America, I'm not sure. I mean, in Australia, yes, there are still checks in theory, usually for large sums of money, not for small sums of money, definitely not for welfare. Everything's electronic these days. The fact that they still use the term welfare check, I'm like, yeah, and the spelling, easy to conflate differences because we use the UK spelling over here in Australia, CHEQUE rather than CHECK, to denote, actual checks for money, rather than just checking in on somebody, CHECK. So the person was like, oh, well, getting up on their high horse saying, it sounds like you're giving a charity to somebody when it should be a common courtesy. And I'm like, well, dude, you want to keep in mind that, not everyone is, everyone's whole life is centered around America, their terminology and how they view everything. And welfare checks in that regard, as a social movement to provide welfare or provisions for people, those less fortunate, is, while not a relatively new thing, the terminology to be associated with that is relatively new, because a lot of people, even I think the Romans, used the term Dole, like a small meeting out of provisions, like doling out things, or to mean, that the state is helping people, those less fortunate. I mean, the welfare in that regard has been around for a long time, like a Roman era. But to clarify and not to ask, but to immediately assume that I mean something derogatory, and they're going, well, how do you mean, the term welfare checks where we come from means X, Y, Z. I said, well, I know, but in Australia, I can call up someone who says, oh, just doing a welfare check, and people go, yep, cool, thanks. And you could say, oh, it's just touching base with somebody, either or. The contextual flexibility of the thinking there is quite interesting, that they're just so focused on the term that they use and their definition, and then sought to apply it to what I had meant rather than seeking clarification. It was quite interesting. So it has me thinking about, times when you've used terms that seem common in the English language, seem quite logical, as in checking in on somebody's welfare is a welfare check, and people have taken it completely out of context, or had it interpreted it to mean it's something completely different from what you intended, and they didn't clarify. They immediately jumped up and said, I think that's wrong. He goes, well, what do you think it's wrong? I said, well, that's your context. I had that over in the US when I was talking about the differences between vaping, e-cigarettes and smoking. In Australia, and quite a few people within the vaping community differentiate between e-cigarettes, which is basically a liquid form of what's basically in a normal smoke, cigarettes or, coffin nails and all that, as opposed to vaping, which has none of those chemicals, and in fact it's much more healthy for you, because a lot of stuff that's in it's the same thing that's in a puffer inhaler, like an asthma inhaler. And when a lot of people say to me, oh, I've got asthma, I go, dude, you really won't have a problem with this. It's only going to have a problem if it contains particularly like a creamy flavour. So you can ask people if it's like a particular creamy flavour, but a lot of things that are in it are actually things that are additives that are in your food. So the fact that people say, oh, but that's bad, and yet chow down on donuts and lollies and sweets that have artificial colourings and flavouring in it is quite amusing to me. However, okay, getting back on track, what are times when you've basically used terms that are logical to you or within your region, area, country that people have misinterpreted? How have they misinterpreted it? And did they seek clarification, and did you clarify that with them? And did you reach a better understanding and communication with regards to that? And then sort of take that in mind, and they bear that in mind, because a lot of what we do, particularly in the community, terms will vary from not only country to country, but also with differing groups and different types of play. Terms can be misinterpreted, given a slightly different mind or onset, and also comes with difference in trends and fashions and the usages of words. So you got to be careful about that. Anyway, Friday, lots of stuff going on here. They're trimming some of the palm trees over here at South Bank. Hard-working people. Anyway, catch you guys later. Bye.